Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. In chapter 10 so far, we've been looking at this incredible contrast between the idols of the nations around the people of Israel and the temptation that God's people have had to worship those idols, which are nothing but the work of men's hands. And we saw a very apt description of that in verse 9. But in verse 10, we're going to see the contrast with the true and living God. This is a wonderful verse, which is going to keep our eyes fixed in the right place. Let's go ahead and read it in Hebrew as we get started. Va'adonai Elohim emet, hu Elohim chayim, umelech olam, mikitzbo tir ash haaretz, velo yakilu goyim zammo. So we see this vav in here, in this context, after verse 9, with the idols and the works of men's hands. This is going to be more of a contrast. So let's translate it as but instead of and. But Yahweh, God, truth. It almost looks like this is a construct, but it's obviously not, because it would be Elohe. So God, truth. This word truth here is almost being used in a sort of an adverbial sense. You could frequently, you actually do see it with a bait in front of it, in truth or with truth. The Lord is God in truth, but it has that same equivalent even if we don't have the bait in front of it here. So Yahweh, God, in truth, we would say, or yes, truly, something like that. He, God, the living God. So here we have Chaim, which is the adjective which corresponds with Elohim here. So he is the living God and King of eternity. So he's the eternal king. Remember this the shurek here is simply because you have a mem following it. So the vav regularly becomes an whenever you have a mem or a bait or a pei or another letter with a schwa as well. So we're used to seeing that. He is king of eternity. Now, what do we have here for the rest of this? We have mikitzpo. So this is min. This is our little preposition min, and the nun is assimilated into that dagesh there. So it's from, and here's a pronoun suffix, 3ms suffix, from his, and ketzef. This is a word which means wrath. It's usually written as a segalit, so you would usually have, under these two letters here, you would have two segols, ketzef, like that. So this is from his wrath. Now, tirash. What do we have here? We have this is a verb. It's an imperfect, and it has a tau at the beginning, nothing at the end. So it's either a 2ms or a 3fs. And while we're more used to seeing 2ms's, this happens to be a 3fs because the subject is right here, haaretz. Eretz is a feminine noun, the earth, and it's the earth. And remember, there's a little change in the vowel simply because of the hey with the article on it at the beginning. So it's and this is the subject of the verb. So that's how we know it's a 3fs. So, and this word here, ra'ash, means to tremble, to shake, something like that. So from his wrath, the earth shakes, and imperfect is sort of an ongoing action. This is what happens when God speaks and demonstrates his wrath. So the min is showing the source of it, or perhaps the occasion for the shaking to happen. It's because of his wrath. And our negation, yakilu. Well, what is this? It looks like it might be from the verb yakal, but it's not actually. What you have here is a yod at the beginning and an u at the end. So this is going to be an imperfect. It's going to be a 3mp. And the letters we have left, this kil with the I vowel there, is going to be a little indication. You wouldn't necessarily recognize this very easily. I'll grant you that. This is a hiphil, and it's from the verb kul, which is rarely used in the kal. I think it exists one time maybe. It's often used in one of the poel or pilpel conjugations or stems. This is actually being used now in the hifel stem. And kul, which means, has this idea of containing something or sustaining something, to contain, well, in this case it's going to be containing his wrath. We would probably translate it perhaps as enduring. It's not able to hold it in. It's not able to endure the fact that God's pouring his wrath upon someone else. And the subject of it is nations. So nations are not able to endure. Nations cannot sustain his anger, his wrath. And sa'am is just a word which means his indignation, again with a 3ms suffix. So he is the true God. The earth trembles at his wrath over here, at his anger, and the nations cannot endure or sustain his indignation. This is the true God, and this is in contrast with these idols which are the work of men's hands. So a pretty simple verse here in its construction. Let's go ahead and look at a couple translations. We'll hide our work here, and we'll pick up, let's see. Let's go look, first of all, at the ESV translation. But the Lord is the true God, the God, truth. So the true God, taking this almost as an adjective, even though, like I said, it's being used a little more adverbially. He is the living God and the everlasting King, King of eternity. At his wrath, from his wrath, at his wrath, the earth quakes and the nations cannot endure his indignation. And there's not a lot of variation in our different translations. Let's look at the New American Bible, Revised Edition. This is a Catholic Bible. The Lord is truly God. So here they put almost they've definitely made it more of the adverbial sense here. The Lord is truly God. He is the living God, the eternal King, before whose anger, so at his wrath the earth quakes, before whose anger the earth quakes, whose wrath the nations cannot endure. So that's pretty much just like we have here. And one more, in the Net Bible, a little more of a paraphrase, more of a development. The Lord, and this should be all capitals here, Yahweh is the only true God. Same over here. These should be all capitals here in most of the translations. The Lord is the only true God. He is the living God and the everlasting King. So the only true God, King in truth. That's how they've kind of developed that. And I think that's perfectly correct here. When he shows his anger, so they've made this more of a temporal way of understanding this mean. Again, it's just a development that whenever it happens, at his wrath, this was what happens. So when he shows his anger, the earth shakes. None of the nations can stand up to his fury, to his indignation, his wrath. Just a very, very clear statement that our God is not like these false gods of the other nations. And now that Jeremiah has established this truth here, in contrast to all the pagan nations in verse 10, get ready, because in the next verse he's going to make an incredible declaration. But we'll save that for our next time. So check back with us soon for the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.